you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Folks, Voss here from thecrisvossshow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, the LA Sings That Makes Official. Welcome to 16 years and nearly 3,000 episodes in the oldest podcast, still regularly broadcasting on a daily basis. There's still a handful of us still left, but we are the only ones doing the daily as near as we can find. So anyway, guys, support the show. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss1 on the TikTok, and all those other crazy places on the internet.
Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind.
Today, an amazing young man on the show with us today. It is a book that he has out entitled Bliss in Triple Rhythm, a toolbox for poets, 9 ways to shape a word song shown in 300 original poems. Martin Bidney is the author who's with us today, and we're going to talk to him about his insights, his experience in life, etc., etc. He's the Professor Emeritus of English and Comparative Literature at Binghamton University. He was born in 1943 in New York City. His father, Dave, was a professor of anthropology and philosophy at Indiana University. His mother, Evelyn, is a practicing physician, and his sister, Rena, is a retired public school art teacher and potter. When he was 7, they moved to Bloomington, Indiana, and he grew up studying classical violin, then took up folk fiddling and singing as well. And since retirement, 23 years ago, became a classical chorister, and he's received several different awards, tutoring, and then took Latin, French in high school, all sorts of different things. But definitely, he knows his music. He taught for 35 years at the university, writing 200 articles plus 2 books of literary criticism. Welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Delighted to have you, Martin. Give us your .coms. Where can people find out more about you on the interwebs?
martinbidney.org.
So give us your 30,000 overview. What's inside this book?
What's inside the book?
Yeah, what's the book about?
Yes, it's called Bliss in Triple Rhythm. And the piece of thinking that's behind it is that you can have a lot more fun writing poetry, and you can write much more colorful and varied poetry if you don't just, if you aren't content with the chief traditions that have been passed down. A lot of species of poetry stanzas and shapes and forms, just as in the animal world, so likewise in the cultural world, are threatened with extinction. And some people may think that, and in fact, who knows what extinction might mean? As long as I'm alive, the ancient Greek forms and Roman forms, Greco-Roman tradition in poetry rhythms and stanza shapes will not die, but that's because I'm an archaeologist of such matters. I wish to discover what are the different shapes of rhythms that people have used for writing their poetry in the past. To think for a minute about rhythm, let's get a little context. Shakespeare is famous for his iambic pentameter. An iamb is la-la, and if you have a pentameter, that's 5 of them.
Wow.
So let's see, that'll work pretty easily. Let's see, to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis better in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, la 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 la, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and. There we are. That's the Shakespeare rhythm, and he wrote millions of those. But you notice there's a rhythm unit which has 2 syllables. La 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 la. and sometimes an extra syllable at the end. That's called feminine rhyme. That's it. That's what he uses. And he may well be the greatest poet that has yet lived. I'm not going to criticize that limitation, but it is a limit, because what if you wanted to write in units where the number of syllables admissible is 3 and not 2?
Oh, wow.
Wouldn't that be interesting? Shakespeare never tried it, but how about this? La 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 la. That's not bad.
Yeah.
That form, la la la, is 3 syllables. It's called an amphibrach, and I used it. And I'd like to tell you where I get my ideas from.
Where?
My whole life is one of dialogue with other people who can teach me something. What I do is, first, I've started out, I was very lucky, I majored in Russian. So that's a really interesting language of a culture that has one of the world's very richest stores of verse. And I love poetry. And I also did the same thing with German. I went to Germany, I went to France and French-speaking Switzerland, and I went to these countries in order to speak the language with the people, and then come back and read their poetry in their language. And not only that, I decided I would do a dialogue in each case. I would show each poet how much I loved the new verse form he or she was teaching me by writing a reply in that form.
Oh, wow.
And I've done that in how many books? 61 books I've published since
61?
Since I retired. Rewired, much better word. I don't use the word retired. Rewired when I turned 61.
I like that paradigm shift that you have there. I'm not retired, I'm rewired.
Yeah. That's the keynote, and that's why I just can't stop writing poetry. I simply love it. And it's these inspiring masters who get me going. And in order to acquire these masters and to learn from them, I believe in travel, and I practice this. Travel widely in time and space.
Wow.
So I have looked for ancient Greek and Roman models of rhythm, and you can find those now on your wonderful modern computer. Even if you don't know Greek, and if you've had limited Latin, you can discover rhythm charts, stress charts, where with symbols, the rhythms are all displayed for you on your computer screen. And if you have a sense for rhythm, I'm a violinist and I'm a singer, and I totally love music. And so what I do is I just write in these rhythms that I'm learning from the computer. So that's in ancient Greece and ancient Rome, and also modern languages. Modern languages are interesting because they write sometimes, as the ancients did, in rhythms that in English might as well be called extinct. And one of them is the amphibrach, la 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 la. Let me read you a poem that I learned about in Russian. I've translated it for you, and because it's one of my favorites. It's by the great romantic poet Lermontov. Lermontov thought that his ancestors were actually Scottish. He thought the family was named Learmont, and that in the Renaissance time they had simply scooted over into Scots love to wander, and some of them wandered to Russia, and it's a fact of history that happened. And he thought, the Learmont who went to Russia didn't do me a very good turn, because he basically stifled me in amongst surroundings of nothing but snow and ice. This is a dreadfully dull and barren place. I brought up in Scotland. My ancestor was a notable warrior. I don't know where he got this information from. Fighting against Macbeth. That is a worthwhile cause, and he did it while living amid the heather-covered hills of Scotland, which I wish so much that I could revisit. And then Lermontov has just spotted a raven. And he says, now, if I were that raven, you know where I would go. I would head straight for Scotland. That's what the poem tells about, okay?
Oh.
The poem is very revealingly called Desire. Oh, why can't I fly like that raven up there, sweeping over me now through the air? How fine it would feel to soar high out of sight, with my freedom, the power of my flight. To the west, right away I would fly, where the fields of my forefathers lie. In mist-covered meadows, their fortress of stone forsaken, they moulder alone. Their heraldic escutcheon, heroic reward, might be viewed, and their rust-ridden sword. With my wing wide outspread, I would shake off the dust from the shield and the sword and the rust. I would strike once again the Scots harp, minstrel bird. Loud the sound down the halls would be heard. It would echo in one, in another would fade, so from one sound would many be made. But my prayers are in vain, my hopes dashed with disdain by a fate that forever will reign. For between my loved land's heather meadows and me lies the vastating void of the sea. Final scion of warriors fearless, I fade. Oh, the snow! I feel broken, betrayed. Though I live here, was born here, this won't be my home. Over plains I, a raven, would roam.
Yeah. So you've been writing poems for how long now?
Oh, actually, I started at just about age 61 when I retired.
You started at age 61?
Yeah, I'm a very strange poet. I mean, you think about poets as young people, right? Writing about their youthful romances and disappointments and such. Like the teenage songwriters in America today. But there's another kind of a poet, the kind, we have our counterparts in other arts, like, remember Grandma Moses? I don't think she painted anything before she was 90 years old. So similarly, at age 61, that's a good time to start, as good as any. And that's why I've been able to, I found it so exciting. I've written the 61 books and published them since then. And the excitement never stops. It's actually, it was triggered off by a crisis. The crisis was I had carpal tunnel. I had 4 versions of carpal. Actually, you see, it was in 2 wrists, and then on top of that, I had cubital tunnel in both wrists. So I had 4 nerve diseases at once, and I thought that was going to be just about the end of me, because I love to read and write, and especially write, and how am I going to do that? But then I learned that that could be cured with nothing but stretches and no surgery at all. Yeah. But at the same time, while I did the stretching cure, the therapist said, leave that violin alone. I'm a violinist and I love to play. And he said, it'll only take 5 or 6 weeks, but don't complicate the cure with the violin.
Yeah.
I listened, but I also got indignant and unhappy. I wanted to make music. So I went to the computer. He did allow me to use an ergonomic computer, which I still use. It's like a tent, not flat. Okay, none of your laptops. Anyway, so there we are. I'm using my new computer, and I went in a spirit of defiance and indignation, and I said, I am going to make music, if not on the violin, with words. And I translated a poem from Russian. I majored in Russian, I told you that, so I had my head full of them. I was as much a teenager as anybody, even though I was considerably more advanced chronologically. I still found it valuable to memorize things like Love by Vyacheslav Ivanov. And that's a very musical piece. And so I translated that, and I gave it to the creative writing person, the poet, next day. And I asked, what do you think of it? And she said, do a dozen. I'll print them in my journal. That started me. All it takes is a crisis. So
all it takes is a crisis. And what a wonderful thing you've done. You've written a lot. There's a lot of different things you put on. Now, on your website, you have a thing where people can go there and interact with different stuff. Tell us about that.
Yes, if on my website, martinbidney.org, you will find that all of the verse forms that I illustrate here, 9 different kinds of them, I think, you will find a book devoted to each, 9 books on my website. If you get attached to one form or another, or all of them, just buy the book, read it.
Buy the book, read it, and away you go.
On top of that, I've made 88 YouTubes. So if you don't even want to buy the book, just listen to me recite from the book.
So you have a YouTube channel too as well?
I sure do.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. You are busy. You are not retired. You are definitely rewired, retread, and put back out there. What do you think people misunderstand about poem or poetry? What do you think people don't get about it that maybe they should realize the value of it?
I think it's partly the predominance everywhere of free verse. People seem to think that it's the only kind of poetry you can write. But I call it gulag verse, because with free verse, you sacrifice all of the things that clearly distinguish poetry from prose.
Oh.
If you don't have complicated, intricate forms of rhyme, if you don't hit the beat hard and illustrate your love of rhythm, which comes straight from the heart, with innumerable forms of beautiful rhythms and the melody, the melodious character of recurrent patterns of vowels and consonants, what have you got left? You've really got, I think, most of the time, sort of prose. It's sometimes called shredded prose because the margins are kind of funny.
But there's always go ahead. There's always that stanza that tick-tockety metronome sort of thing that goes into poetry. Tell us about that.
I'm not sure about what
stanzas.
Stanzas.
Yeah.
A stanza is simply the shape of it's a subdivision of a total poem, and in each stanza you get, in traditional verse writing, the rhythmic pattern. Shall I demonstrate one of them?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's begin with poem 1 in the book. Just a second. Here we go. I call this poem Weather Retort. That's not a weather report. That's a weather retort.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in amphibrachtic tetrameter. La 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 la. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Snowed in by the drift of the outer environs, my spirit I lift with a vigor like Byron's, who pacing the shoreline, the wrinkles marine, called free of all aging, in glory pristine. The river of time in your mind that is flowing, compliant will feel that your spirit, bestowing the tempo, direction, and speed of the piece, can grant from dull slowing a freedom release. I'll cover more space and more time in a minute, should life to a triumph pay tribute within it, and to generate luck where no lack will be known, if glory outpoured to the heaven be shown. Philosophy, helmsman, you aid in preparing the ventures that poetry soon will be daring, when thought of the snow long ago is forgot by sailor who bravely an odyssey wrought.
That's interesting. Yeah. And so tell us how that applies and why that makes a difference in a poem. What application does it utilize? Rhythm
is something we feel deeply because our heartbeat is in the rhythm. Billions and billions of rhythms we hear, or we don't hear, but we could hear, which occur because the heart never stops beating. And in fact, I wrote a book called The Boundless and the Beating Heart. Mm. The beating heart is what you have here, and the boundless is the cosmic, the universe, the bigger energy outside of us. Okay.
Oh, wow.
And so there really are both ways of thinking about the heart. So if you keep this relation in mind, you will enjoy, I think, be excited by rhythms. We like rhythms. Our heart makes us fascinated by rhythms. And that, you've got to admit that piece had a lot of rhythm.
Yeah. It's almost musical. I mean, really, a lot of people don't realize a lot of lyrics for songs are basically poems in some sense or another.
You know what? I'm going to prove the truth of what you just said.
Okay.
Because I've sometimes noticed that while I'm writing a poem, I start singing it. And I did that with poem number 138. Oh, this is fun. Here we go. This is in a form that mixes together the threes and the twos. 1 and 2 and a 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and a 3, 4 and a 5 and 6. 1 and 2 and a 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and a 3, 4 and a 5 and 6. I might be the only person in the world that is currently writing in rhythms like that. It was called in ancient days the fourth Asclepiadic. And in the late 18th century, there was a revival of this form, of these ancient Greek forms, but they didn't get to all of them. I still don't remember reading anything like this in German, but here we go. You of life can a Bible write. Let's just move right into the singing, okay? You of life can a Bible write, gospel tale with a plot, letters on what you've learned, book of Acts for your travel notes, then apocalypse dream, telling of what's to come. You of life can a temple build, big cathedral inspired, dwarfing the hordes that crowd, rosy pane with where a smiling lass, now remembered forever, gave you a courage word. You of life an orchestral world, two can form where the four symphony sections blend, themes recalling of which a hint given first will expand, filling the whole with light. You of life may a mural paint, showing how the divine flame could in upburst rise, learn in circle to whirl round one who the lesson had told. Those that behold will shine.
Wow, that was amazing. Wonderful there.
Oh, thank you.
And it's you talking about the rhythms and math and stuff like this. And how does the math apply to the rhythms? I noticed you were talking about the twos and threes. Tell us a little bit more in depth about how we understand that.
That's a subject on which I am uniquely incompetent to speak.
Okay.
And the reason is I'm bad at numbers and I don't know that much about math. I feel the numbers, but sometimes I get sucked into the mood so completely that I just forget to count. And there are a few pages in this book where there's an extra beat here or there. It happens to me. But no, I don't do any math over it. But you are right. If you do statistical searching, you will find an amazing correlation between mathematicians and musicians. Lots and lots of musicians are really great at math.
Yeah, I mean, you can reverse engineer a lot of music, and it's mathematical equations, I think, if you want. But this is great. I mean, a lot of people think of poetry, and they're like, oh, I had to learn that in English school, teaching, and I wanted to claw my face off with it. But now that I've lived a life where I understand music and lyrics and the written word, and of course I appreciate it because I write books as well, and you can appreciate these things and you can see the rhythm and the patterns, and there's a certain comfort in those patterns, I think, too, as well. And probably because, like you said, our biological upbringing, there's an old thing that we respond to. You'll see a baby or a young kid in a car, they'll fall asleep when the car starts moving. Because it resembles the rhythm of the mother moving when they were in the womb. I know my dogs, when they're puppies, they like to sleep against my hand or some sort of any body part. But usually a hand, I'll stick into the cage when they're created, when you're teaching them potty training, and they'll sleep against my hand. And someone had told me a long time ago, there's two things you do when you get a new puppy. You bring the blanket that he had with the mother, or she had with the mother, and then you either let them sleep against your hand where they can feel the pulse, the rhythm of your pulse, and it reminds them of their mother's heartbeat, or you can get one of those old tick-tock clocks and wrap in a blanket, put it in their bed, and they'll feel the rhythm of that and I think that's their mother's heartbeat. So they'll feel just more secure, basically. Plus they kind of bond to you too if you do that. So I tend to do that. I leave my hand in the cage, and it's a little hard to do when you're asleep and stuff, but at the very least I'll put my fingers in there over
actually
the cage.
that's a fascinating thing, because I've done some thinking about the natural rhythms of oceans and seas, along with the rhythm of our heartbeat. And I went to a science encyclopedia and I looked up what makes a shell supposedly sound like the ocean. I've written poems about this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And you know what the answer is?
What?
Your parents probably told you that's the distant sea that you're hearing in the shell.
Yeah.
But in fact, you are listening to a kind of sea, but what you're hearing is the hugely amplified sound of your own blood in your own ear.
Oh, really? That would make sense, because it is kind of a speaker. Right?
It is a speaker. Yeah. And what I didn't realize until I saw the complicated diagram in the science encyclopedia is that the ear is the same kind of a thing. It's actually multiple echoing chambers. And that explains the very big difference in volume between the sea and in the sea that you hear and the ear blood flow that you don't hear.
Yeah. It has that conical shape. I mean, they even call speakers cones. So, and I never really thought about it, but yeah, that is really a speaker. So it's going to bounce the sound back and forth, especially if you compress it. Wow. I learned something new today. I learned all this new stuff. I do love going to the ocean and sitting by the waves, and that repetitive, even up here, when I visit Utah, I go to a place called and you can hear the lapping of the lake against the patio that you eat at. And yeah, I find comfort in that. And I always have that pacing, that rhythm of the shore hitting the shore. Some people say it's because we originally walked up out of the primordial soup onto the land and converted from fish to oxygen breathing idiots. And that's why we have that affinity with water and the rhythm of it and wanting to be near it. There's something peaceful I find it peaceful. So if anybody doesn't find it peaceful, I mean, I don't know, check what you're doing, I guess. What more do we need to know? What do you hope people come away with when they read your books?
I want them to get a refreshed sense of rhythm, all the different rhythms. For example, let me give you another one, okay?
Sure.
I can't prove my thesis about variety unless I show you some variety.
Let's do it.
So let's do that. It's me.
You have a lot of books on Amazon. I'm trying to go through them all. It's wild. Yeah, you got a lot of books. Wow. It's about everything you can ever find on.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Here's a beautiful rhythm. La 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 la. Haven't done that rhythm yet. This is the dactyl, and the dactyl is danceable. It's good to talk about poetry and tides and water and oceans, but it's also fun to talk about poetry and dancing, all the different kinds of dances. And so here is an example of, just a moment, Poem 104, I'll show you. Here's an experiment that I did. It struck me that when you do your dactyls, da la 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 la, you might as well be playing an Irish jig on the fiddle. So here's a poem called Maggie Brown's Favorite, which is one of my favorite jigs, and I call it Irish Folk Jig Sonnet because it has 14 lines. Here we go. Steadily venturing, simple, habitual, bland, undemanding, though handily danceable, melody mellow and mildly enhanceable, planned, unelaborate rhythmical ritual, feeling of galloping, prancing, and cantering, triple time fiddling to cheer you, relaxingly, festive, equestrian, gently, untaxingly, rapidly chanting and happily bantering. Presently then what was pleasantly pillowing, confident, calm, a predictable, merrily singable thing became crazily, scarily, swaying and raving, a breaker wave billowing, roaring and rising, then sinking, subsiding. Fine, I survived it. Inspired by the riding.
And I mean, these are wonderful. I love how much energy you put into these. You really enjoyed
who
them.
really liked that poem was the guy I had in mind that as I wrote it. I've played this song, Maggie Brown's Favorite, with him many times, Jeff Braunfeld. He's a mandolinist.
Oh, wow.
He really appreciated mandolin.
Uh-huh.
That's like a violin, only you pluck it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, a violinist, a fiddler, already knows where all the notes are on a mandolin.
Yeah.
Now
I hope they do, because that's their job.
Yep. I'd like to show you one more thing about dactyls.
Uh-huh.
Because each of these forms that I'm telling you about can be used for various things. You notice that in that jig poem, I went through a number of moods. It wasn't uniform. And similarly here, you get to stop and think. That was a fast-paced dactyl poem, but it's also very suitable for a slower-paced, thoughtful poem. In fact, I would say it's just about the best thing and the most popular used by the Romans to tell about whatever they felt like. You can write a letter in these dactyls. Here, I wrote one page to sum up a tour of the nature preserve right next to the Binghamton University campus.
Oh.
My friend Julian Shepherd, who's a biologist, took us on this little tour. And I decided I'd write it up in what are called Ovidian distichs or couplets, which here's the main pattern that we use. The pattern has it's in 2 line sections, and each one has this pattern. 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and a 6 and 1 and a 2 and a 3, 4 and a 5 and a 6. So this second line, you noticed, had a pause in the middle of it. You take a break, and also a pause at the end of it, where you can take a breath.
Oh, it's important to probably leave those in there so that people.
I think so. I think it's one of the things that made the Ovidian distich so very, very popular.
There's a lot that goes into poetry, isn't there?
Yeah,
it's like
there is
science.
That's exactly right. So here we go. You're going on a tour with me of the nature preserve. Heavy and brownish and slothful and monkey-like, sparkling with quill frost, high on a hemlock's bare branch, piercing midwinter's pure blue. Napping, the porcupine wakes. You can watch how he's groping and stretching. Want to predict what he'll think? Glance at the damage below. Look at the sugar pine punched full of holes, half demolished, a ravage. That's because year after year, pileate woodpeckers banged, jolted, concussed the hard husk, having hoped for a beetle grub feast day. Standing in snow-covered marsh, only one willow remains. All the less lucky were felled by the beavers that, hapless at walking, like to have dinner at home, bringing the wood to the wet. Now, though, a dam they created when all the doomed others went under, weakening, coming apart, letting new water pour through, makes a fresh forest arise. Came the aspens, impatient invaders, then the intrepid white pines, branches low spreading out wide. Seeing familiar destroyers revisit, the beaver included, banished a century back, harried by fashion-mad hats. There used to be a terrible trend for beaver hats. I bought one of them once in a flea market. I tried to get rid of it later. Caught in the maundering muddle of wondering where we are going, grateful, we come to a stop, stirred by the rule of return. The beavers are back.
Wonderful stuff there. Wonderful stuff. Is there any future books that you may be having coming out that we should know about? Any future works you might be up to?
Oh, I'm doing all kinds of things.
I can tell.
Recently finished a book where I translated 20 or 30 of my favorite Russian poems, and I wove them together with the commentary in verse. But for verse, I chose not any American form, but rather, it is half American, because I altered it, I hybridized it. I used the waka. You've heard of haikus, right?
Yes.
Haikus go 1 and 2 and let's see, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. No, it's 1 and 2 and 3, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and 1 and 2 and 3. Okay, it's got to add up to 7.
Okay.
Rather, 17. 17 is the magic number. And what I do is I write and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. In other words, it's a little longer than a haiku. So I get to conduct something more like a lecture, the way I did here, explaining to you what's in that Russian poem. And I do that throughout the entire book. The Japanese or altered Japanese English wakas are commenting on the Russian poems, which can be in any form at all, and I faithfully copy the form.
That sounds great. And now, as we go out, give people a final pitch out to pick up your books, get to know you better, reach out to you on the website, et cetera, et cetera.
A little louder, please.
Give people a final pitch out as we go out on show to pick up your books, your .coms, where can they find out more about you, et cetera, et cetera.
The best, I'm on Facebook, certainly, but the most convenient place to go is martinbidney.org, because that will feature not only a list of all the things that I've done and links to all the different books, so you can link them all immediately if you like the title and think you might like to try them out, but also the 88 performances that I've done on YouTube and elsewhere. And what you get from that is it's acted out for you. And they vary greatly in length. Sometimes I'll recite and talk for half an hour, but one of them went on for an hour and a half. That was when I had a professor of Russian come in and talk with me about the poems of Nikolai Gumilyov, of whose work I had just translated 8 complete collections. Boy, he is wonderful. You can read about him in a book that I call Russia's World Traveler Poet.
That's a good deal then. You can do that. So we got your .coms, the .org, correct? We got your .org, right? Correct.
Yeah, martinbidney.org.
Thank you very much, Mark, for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. It's been very insightful, and we learned a lot about poems and had some.
Well, I enjoy talking with you. You know what you're talking about too.
I kind of fake it till I make it. But thank you very much for coming on the show, folks. Pick up his books wherever fine books are sold. You can find a ton of them on Amazon. The one we've been talking about, Bliss in Triple Rhythm, a toolbox for poets, 9 ways to shape a word song shown in 300 original poems. Thanks so much for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTokity, and all those crazy places in it. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the most amazing, intelligent podcast ever made to improve your brain and your life. Warning, consuming too much of the Chris Voss Show podcast can lead to people thinking you're smarter, younger, and irresistible sexy. Consume in regularly moderated amounts. Consult a doctor for any resulting brain bleed.